Hello everyone. This is going to be my first video describing my travels for the past a year and a half almost. In my previous video, I mentioned that I've done a lot of traveling in the past year and that I'm currently living in Spain. And so I want to make a series of videos talking about where I've been and why I decided to go on this little adventure. So I'm going to start with about a year ago, a little more. I was living in the Bay Area, the South Bay, so not quite San Francisco, but not too far away. And I really like the Bay Area. But at the time, I just decided that I really wanted to travel more and maybe try to do some long-term traveling. And I started looking into different options, different ways of traveling, sort of long-term, maybe a few months, without spending too much money. And as I started looking around on the internet, I discovered a lot of different options, different companies, different organizations that allow you to either work or volunteer in different countries, sometimes living with host families in those countries. So I decided to first do an experience in Italy. So I left my job that I had there in the Bay Area, and I packed up everything I still owned in my car, and I drove it across the country because my family actually lives on the East Coast in New York State. So I was going to drive my car and everything I owned to the East Coast and leave everything there, and then leave for Europe. So I drove from the Bay Area. Oh, and before I left, actually, small world, you might remember, if you watched my other videos, that a couple years ago I did a teaching experience in Kazakhstan. And coincidentally, while I was living in the Bay Area, several students, Kazakh students from the school where I worked, were in San Francisco in the Bay Area on a sort of a field trip. They were actually doing well, not an exchange, but they were staying, living with families here for about a week. So they happened to be here, and so I was able to meet up with them and say hello, which was really cool. So then around January of last year, I drove my car with everything I owned from the Bay Area down to Southern California. And I visited some friends there because I lived in Southern California for a long time before. And then from there, I drove across country. So from Southern California, I first drove to Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that was the first stop. and I think it was about 11 and a half, 12-hour drive from more or less the LA, Orange County region to Albuquerque. So basically it was just wake up and drive and stop and sleep. That's pretty much it. So I spent one night in Albuquerque, and again, I woke up and I drove, and it was interesting though. I didn't, even though it was January, I didn't expect to find snow on the highway in going through New Mexico and Arizona. But I was far enough north in the state that it was actually snowing. And of course there was some rain. I didn't get a picture of the snow. I suppose I was too worried about driving carefully. But in the very beginning, before I got into Arizona, New Mexico, the weather was still pretty good in California, and you can see there I saw a rainbow, a nice omen. I hoped it was a good omen at the beginning of my trip. And I'm used to driving a lot. Actually, I did drive across country before when I moved from New York to California a long time ago. So I've done this once before. It was a different route that I took, but and I was with a friend that time. This time I was driving by myself, so and I've driven from Southern California to Las Vegas and back many times when I used to live in Southern California. So driving long distances is not that big a deal, I guess, for me. So I stopped in Albuquerque, and I don't remember if this was on the way to Albuquerque or after Albuquerque, but at one place I stopped at this little diner, and it was just kind of, it was weird, interesting little place, kind of, in a very remote, somewhat isolated town. They had this whiteboard on the wall with stuff. I guess a lot of people had drawn on it, so I thought it was interesting. I took a picture of that. And anyway, then back on the road, and you can see the different scenery as the trip progressed. A lot of mountains, a lot of desert, and some really pretty things, but also a lot of sort of just open, flat, kind of boringness. So I listened to a lot of music on the way there, and made some phone calls, keep myself entertained. Let's see, from Albuquerque I went to Oklahoma City. That was the next stop. And there was a sign here along the way at some point that said Prague, which is apparently a city in, I don't remember which state, but I took a picture because I knew, actually, even though I was going to be in Italy as my first living abroad teaching experience, I was actually going to have to go to Prague at some point on the trip, so it was just a funny coincidence there. And let's see, so I stopped in Oklahoma City and spent a night there. From Oklahoma City, and let's see, how long of a drive was that? From Albuquerque to Oklahoma City wasn't that bad. It was about an 8-hour drive, I believe. Yeah, so that was an easy day. I was able to, stop, take my time, stop for lunch, and go check out Oklahoma City a little bit. I didn't really spend any significant amount of time, but able to get a good night's sleep. And then from Oklahoma City, I drove. My next stop was Nashville, but I actually first stopped in Memphis, which is on the way, and I went and checked out Memphis. It's about a 6, almost 7-hour drive from Oklahoma City to Memphis. So I stopped there and checked it out, spent a little bit of time there, and went, and then on to Nashville, which is another about 3 hours. And Memphis was pretty cool. There's Beale Street, which is a pretty famous street, and there's a lot of neon, as you can see, and there's the famous the Blue Note Club, Blue Note Bar and Grill, and it was a really fun atmosphere. Again, I only spent maybe a couple hours there, had something to eat, but it was cool. I'd never been there before. And I didn't have time to check out really anything other than Beale Street, anything touristy, any Elvis things or stuff like that. But from there I went on to Nashville, and I actually spent 2 nights in Nashville, so that I was able to spend a day there. I'd never been to Nashville before, and I really like Nashville. It's a really cool city. There's you can see this section, kind of the center, the kind of center of activity, I suppose the touristy center. And I checked out different places, restaurants and bars and stuff, and I saw these 3 guys performing, singing, playing guitar in one of the big popular restaurant cafes there. They were actually really good. Country music isn't my favorite, but I enjoyed it, and so I checked Nashville out for a day or so. There was this like a novelty store, like a tourist trap type store, and so I was just taking some pictures of some things there. These it's like weird socks, and then this book. It's like a joke, well, not a joke book, but well, you can see the title here, and then you open it up, and there you go. The whole thing is blank. So I had some people that I wanted to send that to, and I always take, well, not always, but a lot of times I take pictures of my food, or usually some sort of tea and dessert. I don't post it on the internet or anything, but I have certain friends and family that I send different pictures to. So I have a couple people that are really into food, and in fact a friend who's sort of an amateur pastry chef, so I send sort of dessert pictures to that friend, and other pictures to family members. So anyway, you can see there I had a nice cup of tea and some dessert. You're going to actually see a lot of pictures of tea and dessert along these travels. So anyway, this was a place I went for brunch. It's on my way out of Nashville. It's actually really good. I don't remember the name of it, but it was a pretty famous place, at least locally, very famous. And see, they're looking at my brunch there. And then this was in must have been in a rest stop or something. I don't remember, but I just thought it was really funny that they had this big rubber chicken sitting up on their sign. That's the only reason I took that picture. So, from Nashville, I continued on to Baltimore because I have some friends that live in Baltimore. So I wanted to stop there and visit them, and I spent a few days with my friends there in Baltimore. And we went to, you can see the scenery, of course, changing along the way. I think I got lost. Where was I? I think I was in Pennsylvania or West Virginia. I don't remember. I got lost somewhere. I took a wrong turn or missed an exit or something and added like an extra hour to my trip. But anyway, so while in Baltimore visiting friends, one of the places I went to was this famous, again locally famous, pie place. So they have all kinds of pies, and you can see a couple of them here. My gosh, I don't remember what they were. It looks like a banana, maple pie and something else I don't remember, but I just remember they were really good. Yeah, like I said, a lot of dessert picks are gonna pop up here. So from Baltimore, which is another really cool city, by the way. I always imagined there were only certain places I would want to live. And then I started, seeing places and visiting places, and I started to realize that, I could live in a lot of different places. I could live in New York City, and I never thought I would want to live in New York City. I could live in Baltimore. I never would have guessed I would have liked Baltimore that much. I stopped in Austin, Texas, and no, was it Austin or was it? I think it was Austin, or was it San Antonio? But there was a city in Texas I stopped at along the way. That's where all those, in Texas is where all those wind generator, the wind farm. I suppose they're windmills. That's where I saw those driving through Texas, and the city I stopped in, Texas, was really cool. Anyway, yeah, there's a lot of really fun, interesting places in the country. You don't even realize until you actually go there and see it. So anyway, let me mention that actually this was in that city in Texas where I stopped. There was this cafe that I went to, and in the bathroom was this weird, kind of small, and there was stuff all over the walls here, and I'll show it. Just different things written and drawn and all sorts of stuff. It was kind of strange, so I actually wanted to take a little video of it, so you can check that out here. But that was in Texas, and so then anyway, back to Baltimore. So yeah, I left Baltimore and headed on to New York City, and it must have been Amarillo. That's where I was, because I was on the 40, which goes through Amarillo. So Anyway, on my way to New York City, and actually I continued on from New York City because where I am from originally, where my family is not, it's in New York State, but not New York City, so it's considered upstate. So I went upstate and spent some time there with my family. I left my car. I left all my possessions, whatever I had left that I hadn't sold or given away, and then I left. And so on the way, I drove. Actually, I went back down to New York City because that's where my flight was, and I had to go down there anyway to do some paperwork to get my visa for Spain. So I spent actually some time in New York City, so you can see a couple pictures of New York City here. And if you've never been to New York City, you have to go. It's an amazing place, even if you wouldn't want to live there, just to visit. But it's huge, so of course there's many different parts of New York City, and they're all very different. So, and then I took this picture of my the meal I had on the train that I took from upstate down to New York City before I actually left the country. So this is going to be my last meal in the country for a long time. And it was just, you can see a wrap from some restaurant at the train station. And that iced tea, oh, that is like one of my favorite things. That particular brand and that particular, well, not that, there's a couple flavors, but that pure leaf Lipton, oh, it's so good. I forgot about that. Actually, I haven't had that in a really long time. So while I was in New York, when I got to New York City from the train, and then I was going from the train to the airport, but as I was leaving the train station, Penn Station, I looked across the way, and I happened to see who but Congressman John Lewis. And I saw him and I was like, what? Is that really? Yeah. And he was with I think one or two people, but it was obviously him. And he didn't seem like he was too busy, so I had to go over and say hello and shake his hand and thank him for his service. And I was just so shocked to just see him just kind of walking by him almost. And so we were both leaving the train station. So I took a picture afterwards when he was like on the other side of the street, as not to be too annoying. So that was a really cool experience, really cool thing, away, kind of a goodbye experience as I left. And then that's it. Then I got on the plane and went to Italy. And you can see, in fact, on the plane, there was, looking out the window, another rainbow. So when I got in my car and started my drive across the country, there was the rainbow. And here I am getting on the plane, leaving the country, another rainbow. So that was pretty cool. And I landed, actually, I connected from New York City to Lisbon, Portugal. And I had a 6-hour layover there, which was annoying, but what are you going to do? And I was actually able to leave the airport and go and have lunch in Lisbon, which was cool. So then from there it was to Milan, and that's where I landed. And I took, let's see, did I take, no, they picked me up. So my experience in Italy began at the airport in Milan. And that will be the topic of my next video, or one of my next videos. Maybe I'll squeeze a math video in between. Anyway, so that was my cross-country trip and the beginning of my time in Europe. And that was in last year, that was 2017, January. Started the drive in late January, and I left the country around February 3rd. So since last February, my European adventure has been going on. So I hope you found this interesting and or relaxing, as usual. Feel free to post any questions or comments, of course. And I look forward to sharing the next part of my adventure with you soon.